Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Dr. Shealy, I'm watching Lindy over here, and she's kind of dancing in her chair a little bit. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com, and we are broadcasting live from the International Institute of Holistic Medicine with Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor, and we are in the Scalar Energy Room. Dr. Shealy, would you like to introduce who's with us today?
And with us today are Lindy, who is Dr. Sorin's wife, and Robert Mueller, my trusty assistant for the last 10 plus years.
Okay, very good. And so, Dr. Shealy, can you describe this room? When I was setting it up, setting up the equipment for this live remote broadcast, Lindy was in here with me, Lindy Sorin, and I was busy, preoccupied with the cables, the wiring, the computer, and so forth, the headphones, the microphones, testing the equipment. And she said, I'm paraphrasing, do you feel it? And I said, yes, I feel it. I feel that there's electric energy in this room. And this room is the size of a conference room, and it has 4 devices in it. Can you tell us what we're experiencing, what this equipment does?
The devices are about 14 inches tall, triangular shaped, and they are putting out an energy called scalar, and also have a block to electromagnetic frequency of the 60 cycle region from everywhere coming through the walls into the room. Scalar is a physics term for energy that is many, many times the speed of light and cannot be measured. You can only measure its effects. I believe personally at this point that many of the unusual healing techniques that we talk about and do energy work on are scalar energy. For instance, a healer working in New Jersey can affect the EEG of someone here in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
A healer working in Ottawa County can affect the EEG of a person here in Springfield. The use of scalar can affect your EEG in very similar ways to what happens when a healer comes at you. We have been interested in this because theoretically scalar energy, which is very fast moving and is not an up and down but a longitudinal wave instead of a horizontal, etc. At any rate, it does seem to be effective with healing. There are individuals in the physics world who have developed this equipment and done research in which they believe that stem cells are being activated. Now, they have no proof of that. No one has measured stem cells themselves. And in fact, it's rather difficult to measure stem cells because the only blood test that we could do is something called CD34, which is a subdivision of the lymphocytes. Now, later today, hopefully, we will get the outcome on Dr. Sorin, who has spent about 40 hours in this room over the last couple of weeks. He's been sleeping in here most nights and that sort of thing. I've slept in here 3 nights, and overall have had about 35 hours of exposure to the scalar. What I feel is something that I feel with other types of healing, is a pulsation from my feet all the way up my legs, from my hands all the way up to my shoulders. And I counted, it's about 4 pulses per 5 seconds, or 48 pulses a minute, and my heart beating at 60 pulses a minute. So it's not my heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
But I associate this feeling also with listening to certain kinds of gamma. Gamma is actually a frequency between 32 and 100 pulses per second. But when I hear certain gamma, I feel this same pulsation, which I associate with spiritual healing. And so we are measuring not just possible stem cell activity, but whether or not this energy can reverse coronary artery disease. That's the big reason.
Dr. Shealy, just a few seconds ago, while you were describing this, you are in a recliner right now. Lindy is in a recliner, and Robert and I are in more traditional chairs. I'm leaning forward into the microphone. And as you were speaking before, what I decided to do was lean back in the chair. I closed my eyes, and the sensation that I had was very much like a high-speed feeling, that what you feel like when you're going to sleep, you slowly drift off. It was a very rapid drift off. And I think that if I wasn't careful, I would have been asleep at the microphone within, a minute, literally. I'm not exaggerating.
And I agree. Sleeping in this room would be a true cure for insomnia. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, we recently added this because we feel that this kind of research is critical. In addition, we're introducing in the room next door a sound music chair. As you know, I've done work for the last 20 plus years with vibratory music, where you feel the music. So we're introducing a new body sound chair with photostimulation, which can help deep relaxation, can help anxiety, and can help insomnia. And then we are going to incorporate in the third room basically a total rejuvenation bed. Most people may have heard me speak about the Rejuva-Matrix, a mattress where we have crushed sapphire on top of copper screening and activate it with a Tesla coil. And that regenerates telomeres. Well, now we're going to incorporate into that same bed a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, a PEMF device, which we believe synchronizes the chakras, and cover that with pure crushed sapphire, because we think sleeping with that will also help reverse coronary artery disease. Even though obesity is the number one measurable precursor of early death, if you will, or premature death, it's still a heart attack that kills most people. And conventional cardiology, in my opinion, sucks. I'm being kind because I'm on the radio. There is no circumstance in which I would allow a cardiologist to touch my body, or a cardiac surgeon.
Lindy, can you describe what you're feeling right now? You have to hold up. Yeah, there you go.
Actually, I feel this like a tingle in my feet and my hands all the way to my shoulders. But I don't know, my emotions are up and down, because at the beginning I was like relaxed. I could feel all the energy coming through my feet and legs. But then I just got this very excited and happy things. I'm not a person that drink caffeine, but it put me in that state, like I want to dance. I don't know. It's just weird, but it's good. It feels good.
Well, I can tell you that I'm feeling the same kind of tingling from my toes, tips of my fingers. I can actually, I totally agree with you. I feel exactly the same thing. Dr. Shealy, are you feeling that same thing?
Well, what I call this pulsing, I think, is the same that you're calling tingling.
Okay.
It's very strong. I mean, it would take probably 60 milliamps of electricity to produce this strong a feeling in my body.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, are there other rooms like this room in the state of Missouri? Do you think that there are other people who are experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing right now with this scalar technology?
To my knowledge, this is the only scalar room in the state of Missouri. Now, back in the spring, when we particularly became interested in it, Dr. Sorin and Lindy and I went to Kentucky, where a physician has a scalar room, and we all spent 8 hours in that scalar room. Do you remember feeling the same thing there, Lindy?
No, I did not.
Yeah, I didn't feel what I feel here in the scalar room in Kentucky, although that's equipment where the people making it claim that it can help people recover from terminal kidney disease and all kinds of miraculous things. That's why we got interested in this.
Dr. Shealy, the room, if I can describe this is a conference room. It looks like sheetrock walls. It's got carpeting on the floor. It's got overhead lighting. It's got a grid suspended ceiling, and it's got a couple windows. Is there anything unique about this room other than the scalar energy devices that you've got, of which there are 4?
No, I don't know anything in the room that would be different from any ordinary room in any building, except the scalar devices.
So what do you expect? Do you have an expectation of the kind of results that
Yes.
the typical person that would come in? Can you describe who that would be and what that person might feel?
Well, while we're waiting for the longer-term outcome with stem cells and coronary artery disease, we've been allowing our patients who come in for other things, from depression, anxiety, to pain, to experience the scalar room at no charge. And one man who's had very severe hand pain, among others, after his third 2-hour session in the room, was totally free of pain for a day. And did he comment on anything about it yesterday when he was in?
We did have a man coming yesterday.
And was that Ken?
Most likely, yeah.
And what did he say about his pain? Did he say anything yesterday?
I didn't have a chance to speak to him.
Okay.
We were here, but he did not say a thing. He was very happy and excited to stay hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been here about 10 hours so far.
Dr. Shealy, I can just see this. In our little hamlet where I live, there are about 100 people, and the local farmers co-op has a coffee pot, and people will go in there and just kind of hang out. I can see that this just might be the hangout of this area right here.
Well, yeah, it isn't. To me, I've worked with spiritual healing for 42 years, and the only other experience where I can get the feeling that I get here is very elegant spiritual healing. I'll be on after this.
Yeah, we're going into a commercial break. Robert's going to tell us what he's experiencing, Robert Mueller. And we're sitting live with Dr. Norman Shealy at the Institute, and we're experiencing scalar energy, and it's a very interesting feeling, class. We'll be right back. We're broadcasting live from the International Institute of Holistic Medicine in Springfield, Missouri, with Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor. And Robert Mueller's with us. Robert, would you describe what you're feeling in this live remote, as we call it in radio?
Well, I'm not consciously feeling any energy in the room, but for me, that's not unusual. I've been exposed to various energies over the years. I typically don't get a conscious reaction to it. The main feeling I have is just relaxation. Even being on the radio, which ordinarily would be a stressful thing for me, I'm relaxed doing it. So that is a reaction. Going back to, for example, the Rejuvenatrix that Dr. Shealy created and the research we did with that, I was part of that study, and in that case, I also didn't feel the energy of the mat. And that was with 25,000 volts running through that mattress at 1 milliamp current. But through testing, I knew it had a positive effect. So I'm not surprised that I don't have a conscious feeling of the pulsing or the energy that's here in the room.
And did you say that you would normally be a little apprehensive, nervous going on the air?
Being on the radio, it would, sure. I'm typically a calm person. It takes a bit to rile me up.
I've known you for years, and you've always been calm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but ordinarily I'd be a little stressed out with knowing I'm going to be on the radio, but...
And you are. No, you are on the radio. There's no question about that.
But knowing that, I'm doing this and was going to do this, I was a little apprehensive coming in, but just in the been in the room, it's helped to calm me down.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that during the break, we were all chatting about, the feelings that we have in this room, and they're very, very similar for all of us. And it's relaxation. It's a very quick acceleration to falling asleep. If I wanted to, I could have been out within a couple minutes here, just in this chair, just sitting back in a standard conference room chair, not a recliner. Dr. Shealy, we have another guest who just came into the broadcast.
Calvin is a friend of mine for many years, and I invited him to experience the scale room because he has chronic lymphogenous leukemia, also some significant pain problems. And I think this is your second visit, Calvin?
Yes.
Okay, tell us what you feel, if anything.
We're going to pass the microphone to Calvin. He's in a recliner as well, class. Calvin?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My first experience when I sit down, I have a little paralyzation in my right arm. And I relaxed, I sit back, and I noticed I started feeling pain. And the only thing that was annoying to me was the road noise out here. I could hear every car went by. I could tell you what kind of car it was or a truck. But other than that, it was very relaxing, and it seemed like it also maybe helped my feet. I have a lot of pain in my feet for some reason, and it seemed like that it did help me when I walked out of here. And one more thing I experienced, I noticed, I have ringing in my ears.
Calvin, could you hold the microphone a little closer, please? Yeah, very good.
And I noticed that it seemed like the pitch of the sound that coming out of my ears changed after having left here. I don't know. It may just be something else. But other than that, it was comforting to just lie back and relax.
Okay, Dr. Shealy?
Well, we're hoping that it has this remarkable spiritual healing. And I do think that scalar energy is what we call spiritual healing.
How long do you think it will be before you are certain that you have measurable results of some kind?
Well, if the CD34 is elevated, because ordinarily the CD34 is 0 to 1 or 2. And Dr. Sorin, we had a precursor exam, and he spent over 40 hours in here, and we had another one on Monday. And I should get the results later today.
So we're talking about the possibility of having bona fide measurable results within a couple weeks from being in this room.
Yes.
Okay. We'll be right back with Dr. Norman Shealy and the International Institute of Holistic Medicine in Springfield, Missouri. So during the break, we were talking with Calvin and Robert Lindy and Dr. Shealy about this sensation, and have the same sensation. It's kind of like the pins and needles, but not very pronounced. It's you can discern it, you can feel it. It's kind of like if your leg goes as pronounced, and we all feel it. Dr. Shealy, what do you make of that? What does that mean medically?
I think it means relaxation. In other words, when your foot goes to sleep, actually, it's letting you know. Again, my heartbeat ordinarily is about 60, and I've counted this several times, and it's exactly 48 pulses per minute. And that is not my heartbeat, but it's something I have felt with other types of healing, like the laying on of hands of a great spiritual healer, like gamma frequencies. There's some gamma music that I picked up early in February this year that I particularly love, and I can be sitting at my computer working, and if I put that gamma music on, I feel this same kind of feeling in my legs and eventually in my whole body.
John, you were giving me a back channel message. I don't have a way of receiving it, and I didn't hear you. Could you tell me again, please? Okay, we're cutting in and out, Dr. Shealy, and so at the top of the hour or at the next break, we're going to shut down the scalar energy delivery system and see if it's the scalar energy that's actually making us cut in and out, because obviously our wireless signal is compromised in some way.
And as Lindy pointed out just before we start, this equipment is supposed to block 60 cycle electromagnetic frequency, so it may well be that.
So, Dr. Shealy, when you say that, we have, I'm looking at this conference room, and we have outlets on, as code requires on all the walls and every 6 feet and so forth apart, and we've got overhead lighting and there's wiring, but it's a commercial building. Do you think that is the 60 cycles that this would be blocking the typical outlets that would be in a home? I see. I see internet wiring, Cat 5e wiring, and so forth. Are the signals that we're blocking?
I'm actually kind of delighted. I'm sorry for the audience, but I'm delighted that this would be the first proof, because the company claims that this does block EMF contamination.
Oh,
Yes.
Also, your metal stripping here
Yes,
is a blocker also.
Right. We also talked about the grid, the ceiling grid tiles, and maybe there's even roof decking, metal roof decking in this commercial building. Robert, you had a couple of thoughts you were going to mention about the testing, the bona fide and measurable tests.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dr. Shealy, you mentioned before the break testing CD34, and I was going to ask what specifically that is and what it's meant to show.
Right. I have been studying hours on the internet and looking for objective evidence of stem cell activity. Everybody is at least aware that stem cells are being harvested from fetal blood, or from your own bone marrow, from your fat, and injected into the body. Now, that's a pretty complicated surgical procedure to some extent. The only called lymphocytes, called CD34, and they are known to be activated and increased by something called ECP, or external counterpulsation, which is one of the few excellent treatments for coronary artery disease. It actually reverses.
Okay, we're back live. We are now disconnecting the scalar transmitting devices to see if that had any impact on why we were breaking up. So we've got 3/4 of them now we have 3/4 of them disconnected. Okay, they're all totally disconnected. Let's see if our ability to stay on the air improves.
Can John tell any difference?
John, can you tell any difference? Okay, very good. Okay, so Robert, what were you saying?
I was asking Dr. Shealy to discuss the testing that he was going to do to determine whether scan was effective, and you were mentioning about the CD34.
Yes. Well, the CD34 is the most important because it's a test you could do on blood itself, and in case the cells come out of the bone marrow and get to work, help cleaning it up. But there are no known treatments in medicine today except ECP. And ECP has hundreds of articles proving how effective it is in coronary artery disease. Right here in the city of Springfield, only Merciless has the equipment and they don't use it.
And please tell us one more time what ECP is.
External counterpulsation. There they put a pressure suit. It's like a huge blood pressure cuff around your calves, another one around your thighs, another one on your buttocks. And so when it pumps, it lifts you off the table. And it's a whoop, with your heartbeat. And it does, because of the extreme pressure, which is safe, somehow mobilize the stem cells from your bone marrow. And it does clean out the arteries. Now, it takes 35 days, that is 7 weeks, 5 days a week for an hour to do that. And then it's going to take up to a month or two after you do that for the cleaning out of your arteries. That is a wonderful procedure. And interestingly, the cardiac surgeons have, in my opinion, fraudulently, scam-wise, Medicare not to pay for ECP unless you're too sick to have coronary bypass surgery. Now, if it's good for people too sick to have coronary bypass surgery, it must be terrific for those who aren't that sick.
Well, it certainly would appear that way. Now, when you talk about this pulsing device, is this similar but in a much stronger mechanism, like what they put on the legs of people who are in induced comas, who are in the intensive care and can't move for days and weeks?
Exactly. It is somewhat like that. It's a bit more intense, but somewhat like that. Now, interestingly, by the way, I'm just sitting here aware, since Robert unplugged the scalar devices, that my gentle 48 pulses is gone.
Mine too, and I'm feeling, I felt warmer, and now I feel a little bit cooler. Is it just me?
No, you're right. I start moving around too.
Okay.
That means I'm not stiff.
Lindy?
Yeah, I start feeling like I'm moving around. I don't feel like I was relaxing in one place. Now I start like moving my arms and legs and don't know what position I want to be.
And this was just a couple minutes ago.
Right.
So are we saying now, Dr. Shealy, that when this is powered on, the feeling is quite close to being instant within a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds, and then when it's off, you realize it a minute or so later, maybe 2 minutes later?
That's what it seems like so far. Calvin?
Well,
A little closer to the microphone, Calvin.
I still feel a little bit of energy, but maybe just, I know when I left here the other day after doing this for 2 hours, that it seemed like it lasted for maybe 3 or 4 hours of feeling. I could still feel sensation. I'm in a lot of pain today, so I don't know, I don't know how.
Has that changed in the time you've been here?
The pain?
Yeah.
A little bit, but I haven't got up and walked yet.
I understand.
Too. So I don't know. This relaxing helps it.
Okay. So, Dr. Shealy, what do we make of this? Are these I'm experiencing this, and I'm saying exactly what I'm feeling on the air. It is very similar to what the others in this room, the 5 of us, are feeling. Is this what you have learned from everyone else who's tried this? Are there any exceptions?
No, this seems to be the pattern that we expect in this room. And incidentally, Dr. Sorin, who is a true night owl, has told me on more than one occasion that he sleeps much more easily and deeply in this room than any other time.
I've got another question, and maybe Lindy can shed some light on this. Lindy, your husband, Dr. Sergey Sorin, is a mixed martial arts practitioner. He gets into these sparring contests, and he gets banged up every once in a while, right?
Yes. How you know that?
Oh, I think I was with Dr. Shealy, and he said, "So what happened to your face?" Something like that. And I think something about not ducking or something.
Oh, that sounds like my husband.
When we come back, I'd like to ask you, do you sense a feeling of rapid healing? Dr. Shealy, that was a very interesting question that Calvin had about he's got some metal in his body from surgeries. He's got some metal parts that have been added. Would you share with us the question and the answer? Calvin, would you like to ask that question? That was quite interesting.
The other day I had mentioned when I'd been here to my first visit, after I left here, I had tingling in my fingers and my toes for about 4 hours. And my question to Dr. Shealy was, I've got a titanium hip pin, I got steel plates in my shoulder, and I was wondering if this could be storing some energy from that.
So I guess the question is, he's got metal, and does the metal in his body store the energy, the scalar energy? Does it stay with him for a while?
And it would seem to me that's entirely possible. because metal, of course, has some piezoelectric effect.
Mm-hmm.
And piezoelectric means it can store, receive, and send energy.
So, Dr. Shealy, then we've got a grid in the ceiling, a suspended ceiling. We've got other metal. You're in a recliner. There's some metal supports and structure within the recliner. Lindy, you're in one. Calvin, you're in one. There's some window frames. So is this scalar energy that's being transmitted at a very small wattage, if you will, able to be stored in this room after it's shut off for a while?
And that's interesting. Of course, they suggest, the company that makes the scalar equipment, that you keep it on 24 hours a day to keep the room, quote, conditioned. So they're suggesting that something in the structure of the room can partially store the scalar energy too.
So even the manufacturers of the equipment don't know the full impact nor the full benefits of the equipment.
Exactly.
You know, many years ago, in the 1980s, I was in California, and we were manufacturing satellite communications receivers. And we would get calls, you know, we'd make these receivers, and we thought that they were going into homes. And people would hook up this big 12-foot, 10-foot parabolic reflector antenna, aim it at a satellite, and bring satellite television into their homes. This was during the infancy of that industry. Well, we would get calls from people who bought our equipment they were setting them up in motels. So a motel would get an antenna, one of our receiver, and then retransmit to all the rooms in the motel. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is we found that our customers found very interesting uses for our equipment. And I guess that's what we're finding out here today, right?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Vince. On 2 occasions in my life, I have actually heard a radio station without a speaker or anything attached to me when I'm near it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 20, 30 feet outside the station.
You could feel it in your body.
No, I hear it.
Hear it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I don't know why or how, but I think this is part of the broader field that we call also intuition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, intuition is a pretty significant thing. I personally consider that all creativity, whether it's art or music or science, is the result of knowing intuitively, for which you have no real basis. In other words, it just comes.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, you and I are sitting across from each other, and to my right, there's a conference room, a wall. It's 20 plus feet away. And is there another business or operation separate from the Institute here that occupies the space on the other side of that wall?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Just on the other side, there's a bigger office.
Okay, so what is the potential for the scalar energy to be in that part of the building, which is not part that you're in?
I would think it has to go through there.
Okay.
Especially with the device on that wall that's connected to the other business.
There you go. There you go. So we're talking about scalar energy. We're talking about the potential for medical healing with scalar energy. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and we're going to be right back. Had a whole bunch of questions relating to C-sections and altering human evolution. Suicides are up. Talking about motorized scooters in stores, the increased use of them and the increased use to need them because we use them more and more and more. We'll be right back after these few short top-of-the-hour commercial announcements and news. Everyone all set? Cock, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Calvin has joined us. Lindy Sorin is with us, and Robert Miller is with us. And we've been talking about energy and scalar energy and healing. And I've got a list of questions, Dr. Shealy, that I was hoping that we could go over. And one of them is about your scholarship and in the chemical industry. The industry is certainly willing to poison every man, woman, and child on the planet, as well as animals and plants.
Well, I agreed to offer this scholarship to a graduate student who wants to measure the quality of groundwater in this area, with the caveat
Specifically Roundup?
Specifically, I don't care about the other stuff particularly. I consider Roundup the greatest poison that has been released on the world. And Monsanto, of course, is the evil empire behind it.
You know, I don't know if you've had a chance to meet him, but he was at some of our Get Prepared expos in Lebanon, Missouri, and his name is Richard Linebaugh, and he called Hewitt Messenger, and they drill wells in this area. And he's been on the air with us many times, and he talks about groundwater, and he said that there's an aquifer, and it's you can access it. It's about 450 feet below Springfield, Missouri, but it's contaminated.
Can you see what it's contaminated with?
He has not, but the water is not safe for drinking purposes at that level. So the wells that we're using now in this village are the next layer down, which is about 600 feet down. So yeah, we have damaged water all the way down to 450 feet, and that's here. And I'm sure there are other locations where it's damaged even farther, and fracking is continuing to damage it. So what we flush down the toilets, the industrial waste from industrial companies, flushing down their drains, plus the spraying of chemicals. You're absolutely right, and I applaud you for that. Robert, did you have some thoughts on that? Okay, Robert is putting on the headphones. He's got the mic in his hand. Robert, did you have some thoughts about how we're poisoning ourselves, the water, and what Dr. Shealy is doing to alert everybody with this scholarship about looking for Roundup in the drinking water?
Well, my reading on that's been fairly limited, but just the little bit I've had in discussions with Dr. Shealy, it is alarming. I live on a rural area, and I have a well. My well's about 350 feet. Mm-hmm. So I'm directly concerned with what's going on with that. And,
all right, let me share something that Richard Linebaugh said. And I think it's quite fascinating, and it's, I guess, worthy of a minute of our time here on the broadcast classroom. He was telling us about this neighborhood, and there were some homes in this small area, and they had a community well. And one of their neighbors put in an orchard and started growing fruit trees and fruit. And naturally, as the trees started producing fruit, they sprayed the fruit trees. And the next thing you know, the community village well is contaminated with insecticide from the spraying of the neighbor's fruit trees. So, we may think that we've got a well and everything's good. And at one minute, the well may be good, and the next minute, it may not be good, or gradually may become contaminated. So that's one thing. What are your neighbors doing? So there's education is required to tell neighbors about what they're doing that may poison the neighbors and the neighbors' neighbors. And there's another mention, and it was something that we really don't think of, and that's, you have these wells and well casings. And as the trucks hit a pothole, these large 18-wheelers hit a pothole, they thump and the ground vibrates a little bit. And over time, that, and if you live near railroad tracks, if there's a separation in the tracks, there's a little dip, and the rail cars thump, 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 they force the ground to shift a little bit, which opens up that seal in the wells. So now the next time it rains, if the rainwater contains pollutants and insecticides and so forth, that can go right down the side of the well and contaminate your well right where your well pump is. How about that, Robert? What do you think?
Well, that's certainly a concern. I'm fortunate in that I'm located in such a place that I don't have to worry about heavy machinery coming through and things like that. Mm-hmm. But certainly, and my neighbors are not growers, they're not farmers of any kind or that. So I'm fortunate in that regard. Now, I do live within about 5 miles of the Springfield landfill. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a concern there of, what's leaching down into the ground and where that's going.
Yeah, and that is a great concern for everyone who lives just about everywhere, because there are landfills, Dr. Shealy.
And don't forget, no matter what the city utilities do to the water to possibly do some kind of so-called purification, they poison it immediately with the original weapon of mass destruction, chlorine.
Yep, and that was used, and you talk about weapon of mass destruction, it was used for certain in World War I, absolutely for certain. My grandfather was gassed, and it damaged his respiration and his vocal cords for the rest of his life.
And then they add another poison, fluoride. And so the government is poisoning in every city in the country people with chlorine and fluoride. And one or two cities have banned fluoride, but not chlorine. And I don't know what the answer is, to be quite honest, because if you didn't chlorinate water, there are all kinds of infectious agents that can get into it. I mean, remember, birds and all kinds of wild animals and others do pass their waste right on the surface of the ground, which soaks into the groundwater as well. So the water coming out of the ground is not necessarily pristine.
And while we're talking about water, brought to mind, there are a number of people who are collecting roof water, and they think, hey, we can use that, save it, and store it, and that's where the radiation lands on the roof from the airborne radiation from, I'll call it Fukushima and Chernobyl and so forth, and then it gets washed off the roof into these rain collection barrels, and then people are using that in their gardens, and they're also drinking it.
Done over 20 years ago, they released some kind of radioactivity in the air in Denver, and within 2 hours it was measurable in Indiana.
Interesting that you mentioned that, Dr. Shealy. We did some nuclear testing, atomic bomb testing back in the 1950s and into the 1960s. And the medical profession was complaining that the X-ray film that Kodak was supplying was, and the X-ray film said, look, we can't use this. And Kodak did a study to figure out what the heck's going on, because Kodak thought that the X-ray film was fine. What happened was there was so much radiation in the air from the nuclear testing that it was damaging the X-ray film in transport from Kodak in Rochester, New York, to the hospitals in the Midwest. So the transit time, these X-rays were exposed in their paper envelopes, these dark envelopes to prevent the light from getting in, weren't protecting the film from radioactivity in the air. So they tracked it down. So yeah, have we been irradiated? Yeah, I'm sure we all have, to some extent.
Yes, more radiation released in the last 60 years than in the previous 5 billion.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you're doing this study about Roundup and water, and class very, very seriously. The water that we consume at the farm is filtered. We use an activated carbon filter, and we make sure that all the water that we consume goes through that filter, because we don't know. We don't know if the well that was okay 20 minutes ago is still okay today, even though we have a well. And something that I've noticed, I'll share this with you. We have a whole house water filter, and it's out of the well pump, goes into the well tank, and then all of it gets filtered with a whole house water filter, and that filter is white. What I noticed is that filter is becoming browner and browner, faster and faster, because it has a compartment that I can see the filter, and I can see the water going through the filter. So what used to take a couple of months for the filter to become brown now takes hours, literally hours. So I'm concerned about the water we're drinking. Any comments on that?
Well, obviously, brown implies all kinds of possible contamination.
Right.
And if anyone who lives in a city must have a water filter.
And get one that filters out chlorine as well as fluoride. An interesting way of just checking to see what the water looks like. You all have toilets in your houses and places of business. Why don't you just lift up that back tank and look in there, seriously. And what you see is the same water that's in the flushing tank, not in the bowl, but in the tank that provides water to the bowl, that's right next to the sink. So you're drinking the same kind of water that goes into the back of that toilet tank. That'll give you an indicator as to whether you might want to get a filter, like right now or sooner. Calvin, did you have
I was just thinking about all the cities that have lead piping.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's why they call them plumbers, right?
Yeah.
Because of the lead. Yeah, absolutely right. And if you have copper plumbing in your house, you probably have at least 5% lead content in the sweating of those joints, the soldering, if you will, of those joints. Typically, it was 50% of the content of solder was lead.
Also, I'm an avid fisherman and a hunter, and now both industries are cutting down the amount of lead they're using. Your shotgun shells now are going to steel, And a lot of the fishing stuff that you buy now, they don't use lead. Your
Lead
drill
sinkers?
nets and whatnot.
Lead sinkers, they don't use lead sinkers anymore.
Well, they still do, but now like your throw nets they use to catch your bait with, they're going to steel coated, plastic coating over the steel, cutting down the amount of lead they use.
Very good. Dr. Shealy, I've got a question for you, and I was reading a story about C-sections and, human delivery of babies. And there's an alarming number of people. It used to be back in the 1970s, women who were delivering babies, about 5% of them had C-sections. Now there's many more. When we come back, we talk about how many are having C-sections and the effect on human evolution. We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy and Lindy and Robert and Calvin. Dr. Shealy, in the last break, as we're going into the last break, we're talking about C-sections and altering human evolution. In the 1970s, less than 5% of women had their babies via cesarean section. Now it looks like in the United Kingdom, there are about 25% or more having C-sections. So what that tells me is that now any size woman can have any size baby. But it's more complicated and more concerning than just that, isn't it, Dr. Shealy?
Far more, because cesarean interferes tremendously with the biochemistry of labor and delivery. During labor, the mother puts out a huge amount of oxytocin, the grounding, the bonding, the humanizing hormone. Anesthesia totally blocks that output of oxytocin. So it means those children are much more prone to having feelings of rejection, feelings of low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, etc., etc.
Wow. That, as I think about this, I think young people today, and they're looking at their phones, and they're looking at, did I get a message, in the last minute? And I think they feel a need to be in contact with people, and maybe it has to do with this rejection, that they need constant reassurance that they're loved and thought of, and someone is willing to spend nonstop time communicating with them about who knows what.
And they don't realize that they are damaging their brains for the rest of their lives by using their cell phones for hours every day.
Lynn, did you have a comment? Yeah.
Now that you just said that, it could be, I understand that technology is important, but now that you bring that, it's extremely crazy seeing these kids with a phone and to ask for attention, taking selfies, snapshots, and it's like every 10, 30 seconds you see them on the phone all the time. So that could make sense.
Well,
really.
This morning, before I left the farmhouse to travel to Springfield to be at this live remote with you all, I went to Facebook, and the only thing I use Facebook for is to say, here's who will be on the air with us today, and here's what the topic is. Well, I opened up Facebook, and for some reason, there was an image of somebody sending me this picture, and it was a small snake on a tile floor. Now, seriously, if we had a snake wander into the farmhouse, I wouldn't make sure that everybody I knew saw this picture of the snake. I mean, seriously, I might say to Mrs. Finelli, oh, by the way, don't go over there because I haven't gotten the snake yet. But it's a little tiny snake. But, I wouldn't make it worldwide news. So it seems to me that people are concerned with all kinds of minutia, and they are sharing this minutia, and we're all stuck in this mire of minutia.
And that brings us to the study that was reported within the last 2 weeks, that talking on a cell phone puts you into the brain state similar to being drunk. I mean, just talking on it, not talking about texting, which some people do. The increase in accidents from just not just texting, but from talking on the phone has increased so that now we're approaching over 20% of all major automobile accidents are the result of people on the phone.
And we talked about on a previous broadcast at USA Prepares, Dr. Shealy, was there was a story about people who are operating their vehicles in parking lots. And we'll talk about like the Chinese factory outlet, Walmart's parking lot, a really big parking lot. And people who were interviewed were saying, yeah, I don't really have to pay as much attention in a parking lot because I'm not traveling as fast. But there are plenty of accidents to say that they're incorrect in their thought process.
Yeah, they're absolutely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just equivalent to being drunk, just from talking on the phone. That is the distraction of it. And then, just yesterday, there was a report that people who sleep less than 7 hours a night also function at a level essentially equivalent to being slightly drunk. In other words, 27% or so of all accidents on the highway are now from people who are suffering from inadequate sleep.
Dr. Shealy is with us, and we're talking about C-sections. We're talking about cell phones disrupting our ability to think properly and concentrate. Let's talk about suicides when we come back. We're talking about cell phones and how, during the break, how we could use an earbud and a microphone on a cord and operate our vehicles while traveling and be zoned out. And I think it's crazy, Dr. Shealy, having cell phones on our person. And I'll tell you what, poor Calvin just got beat up during the break because I asked him where his cell phone was, and he pointed to his pocket. And I said, "What? Keep it in your pocket." And he said, "Yeah, right here." And I said, "What do you?" Your heart. And so now his cell phone it's not in your pocket anymore, is it?
It's in the trash can.
It's in the trash can. In the trash. Dr. Shealy, your thoughts on that before we go into the next subject?
Well, all I can say is that I think it is the most dangerous and the most antisocial thing that has been invented in modern technology.
Really good point. So you have company come over for dinner or lunch, and they're all sitting around the kitchen table, an informal lunch, and out of everybody's pocket comes a cell phone right next to them. It's like napkin, fork, knife, cell phone, all right, plate right there, right? Isn't that the way it goes?
Not in my house.
Not in my house either. I used to have a sign that said no cell phones, and now everybody knows that no cell phones come in our house. So they leave them in their vehicles if they're visiting the farm. But yeah, I think we've been invaded. I think there's a feeling that we need to be in constant communication, and the answer is we do not need to be in constant communications with those who want us. And the word you used, Dr. Shealy, the word you used, on tap. And I feel delighted not being on tap.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
No need for it.
Yep. Okay, suicides. There was a 42-year-old man, Rashan Salam. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, and he really did well in the field of sports. Heisman Trophy winner, young guy, 42 years old, decided to shoot himself. He was struggling with drug use. Dr. Shealy, you've got some thoughts about this.
Well, interestingly, a report came out just this morning. A recent study of medical students showed that 27% of medical students, now let's take it, the medical student should be somewhere between 22 and 26 years of age usually. 27% of them are clinically depressed, and 11% have had suicide thoughts at least. And that's a pretty darn high percentage for people that young. Now, in the population at large, I find that 40% of people in big meetings that I go to have depression, and another 40% of what I call subclinically depressed. And subclinically depressed means, well, you're not officially depressed, but you're sort of almost there.
Dr. Shealy,
I was talking with a woman just yesterday about this, and she came in for something totally unrelated. And then I said, you know something? You aren't depressed, but you're subclinically depressed. And she agreed, of course.
When we take my mom to her doctor's appointment, annual checkup, she get asked this question from her doctor, and I've known her doctor for years. I mean, almost 10 years. And so, Mrs. Finelli, do you ever feel like hurting yourself? Like, why?
It's Obamacare. Obamacare apparently mandated that physicians ask this question of seniors.
Do you ever feel like hurting someone else? And that's, she gets asked this, and you know, it makes my blood boil when I think
I feel like hurting somebody else when I'm asked that question.
It makes my blood boil thinking, you know, he knows my mom, he knows we take care of her, and then he asks questions like, you know, are you being taken care of? Are they, you know, looking at us? Are they taking care of you? Are you getting
Do you dare
fed?
speak?
I have to bite my tongue. It's like what's the matter with you, doctor? Obviously, we're here. You know, we're all here for this appointment. We want to make sure that we all hear the same information from you so that we know what your thoughts are, so that we can make sure we do the things that you're recommending if we agree with them. You know, why are we asking this question? And so my question now is, I guess there are some people who are really depressed and are thinking this way.
No question about it. Suicide is a remarkably prominent part of our society today. And I just want to point out that once they're given antidepressant drugs, the incidence of suicide doubles.
Okay, so now we have a database, a medical records database, online, real time, accessible from whoever has, you know, permissions, if you will, to access it. So they can correlate the antidepressants and the answers to the questions. So is it working? Are we able to have these people terminate their lives or want to because the medications that we're prescribing for them seem to be working?
And the answer is antidepressant drugs are depressants. They do not cure depression. Sometimes the severe depression is brought up to sort of a blah, semi-zombie state of being. But to be truly happy on an antidepressant drug, I haven't seen it.
And Dr. Shealy, now that you mention this, and as you were saying, I was thinking about a man, and I was there when the nurse said, we're just going to prescribe this because it'll just take the edge off. Just take the edge off. Is that what they're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
Take the edge off. Take the edge off to drive you in.
Taking the edge off what?
It's an outrage. So, Dr. Shealy, I was in one of the Chinese factory outlets, Sam's Club, and it's part of that conglomerate. And I saw these motorized scooters. So a customer, a member of the club, can hop on one of these scooters and race around the store with the basket attached to the scooter. And they have them in other stores as well. Chinese factory outlet has them at Walmart. As we get to the store and we hop in these scooters and we ride around on them, do we become more dependent on using these scooters?
Yes.
To the point where, okay, so what would you see as a medical doctor, the use of these scooters? Should we avoid them as long as we possibly can?
Absolutely. You know, the evidence is now that people who do not at least stand, just not even walking 2 hours a day, have a much higher incidence of heart disease. And we have become such sedentary characters, I call it couch potato, that it is another of the major contributors to early death.
One of the things that we've talked about on this broadcast, Dr. Shealy, is it seems that the incidence of twins, co-joined twins, massive, very serious birth defects, is on the increase. I attribute that to the poisons and the toxins. I mean, that's just my anecdotal evidence showing me that it's got to be that. The electromagnetic radiation, the actual radiation from Fukushima and Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and the reactors all over, and then the toxins and the waste and the poisons and the insecticides, and the list goes on and on. 360 degrees of being surrounded by threats in our environment, mostly man-made. So we have these co-joined twins. Now, the ones I'm talking about have made the news. They are attached from the sternum to the pelvis. They share one digestive system. These two girls that are joined together share one uterus, one liver, one bladder. So these twins joined together have 4 arms, 2 heads, 2 chests, 2 legs coming out of one side. A third leg, very disfigured at the foot, has 7 toes. And the mother was urged to abort, knowing early on that this was going to be the outcome. The surgery is going to have a 30% potential success rate. And I don't know how you could have a 30% success rate when you only have 2 legs, when you only have one uterus, when you only have one bladder, and you only have one digestive system. It seems like this is going to be a miracle, and I hope that it ends in a miracle.
And which half are you going to kill? That's what.
Right. That's exactly right.
I mean, if there's surgery, one half of this monster has to be destroyed.
Yes, and so, right, we have 4 arms, 2 legs, and then the third leg coming out the side. So there's massive bone restructuring that's going to be necessary to make this person whole as possible. Dr. Shealy, we've talked about suicide. We've talked about assisted suicide. We've talked about abortion. Is this a case when it's just such an uphill struggle that maybe we should consider avoiding all the pain and the suffering that's going to happen?
Well, as you and I have discussed, I personally do not believe in abortion. On the other hand, even normal, if they're going to be rejected for the rest of their life because the one that mother doesn't want them, I think it's better to take care of it then than to kill the child with the lack of nurturing. And of course, in this situation, I'd have to say, knowing that this kind of severe anomaly was going to occur, I would have to agree that an abortion is necessary.
Dr. Shealy, back in the 1950s, I've heard stories about a child who was born, many stories like this, children who were born with very, very serious birth defects. And the nurse would take the child away from the mother would be cleaned up, and next thing you know, the child didn't make it those last few minutes in the absence of without the mother seeing it. And it used to be called mercy killing. Do you think that was true, or do you think those are just stories?
Well, I don't know, of course. I was never involved in such a case.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure it happened.
There you go. I'll be right back, and when we come back, we'll talk about sapphire crystals, crushed sapphire. I've got them around my neck, and I'd love to hear Dr. Shealy tell us how they work, why they work, and the potential for them. Dr. Norm Shealy, I'm Vin Finelli. This is USA Prepare. You know, Dr. Shealy, I've got that no whining rejoinder, and you know where that comes from. I used to, when I was in the automobile or the truck, I would listen to talk radio. And I'd hear these guys, these national broadcasters, all names you recognize, and they would do 8 minutes of whining, and then they'd hit the reset button and rewind the same topic, and then they'd hit the reset button and rewind, and they would just complain and whine and whine and whine with no answers. So that's where the no whining comes from. I just wanted to share that with you. And it's aimed right at a major broadcaster who spent a lot of years on the air, and we all recognize him, but we don't need to say who he is. Crushed sapphire. Dr. Shealy, I have a pouch around my neck that comes from your institute. Thank you very much. Crushed sapphire. Can you, Ed in Florida had one on, and you have them. Tell us what that's all about, please.
Well, sapphire is a piezoelectric material, and it is stronger than quartz, which is sort of the original piezoelectric material. Piezoelectric means that it can receive, store, and transmit electromagnetic energy. Now, back in 1988, I did a study with plain quartz, about the size of your thumb, compared with glass. And we found that 70% of people could stay out of depression using quartz crystal that was properly imprinted. Only 28% of those who got glass.
Mm-hmm.
And so it occurred to me that by crushing the sapphire, we increase the surface area, because it's only so much surface area in a solid piece of crystal. And the purpose in this crushed sapphire is to store and send back to the body peace, relaxation, anti-stress, if you will. We have done a small study on it with wearing a pulsed electromagnetic field device for at least an hour or more a day, plus the crushed sapphire. And for instance, in Dr. Sorin, his calcium score in the heart was 97 originally. And after 6 months of this, it came down to 1, which is quite striking.
Absolutely.
And now we're continuing to play with that. We're about to actually make it into a total mattress where we have 3 of the PEMF devices that cover your whole body. And we're going to cover that with crushed sapphire. And then you can sleep on it all night with the PEMF touch. And I actually have had such a device on my bed. I plugged it in last night for the first time in a long time.
Is this something that you're working on with instructor Lou Cassidy? Is he part of this?
Yes.
Fabulous. I'm glad to hear that. So, Dr. Shealy, imprinting the sapphire crystals that I have around my neck, how does one go about doing that? For someone who hasn't done this before, how would you tell them to do this?
Well, they have been programmed by me before they're sent out. But obviously you can re-imprint them, but you always want to do it with a very short, happy 3 to 7 words is all you want to put, and a thought. And when you put it only in the morning, it's nice if you just sort of repeat that thought to remind it what its major role is.
And so you can, class can order this off your website if they want, normshealy.com. And are you shipping them now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And they would be imprinted by you prior to shipment?
Yes.
Okay. And have you found anyone who said that they did not get any benefit at all?
I haven't had any reports like that, but, we did do that small study.
Yeah.
In 1 week, total symptoms decreased significantly, and anxiety symptoms decreased over 92%.
There you go. Well, it's been delightful broadcasting with you today, Dr. Shealy, at the International Institute of Holistic Medicine in Springfield, Missouri, live remote. Lende Sorin has been with us, and Robert Miller's been with us. Calvin joined us. It's been delightful. And class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.
Thanks, Vince.
Thank you.